Turia, it's quite a coup to get this from the Cabinet for the plain packaging on the cigarettes.
Well, I'm really pleased that basically in principle they have agreed to put it out for consultation, because it is an issue that impacts on all New Zealanders, indirectly as well as directly. So yes, it was very pleasing that we were able to get Cabinet to agree to the consultation process.
What do you make of the tobacco industry's claim that it will actually encourage young people to take up smoking?
Well, that's not true. They also said that when we raised the taxes, that it wouldn't have any impact on the uptake by young people, and that proved to be not true. The fact is that the more we can intervene with a suite of initiatives, that in the end, I believe that young people will start to look at tobacco differently, and already we're actually seeing that, where young people are saying that while tobacco has been part of their parents' past, it's certainly not going to be part of their future. So I'm attending hui often where young people are standing up and making that statement, and it's exciting.
So talk about a black market is off the mark?
Well, I think it's off the mark because Australia has already dealt with that in their country. We don't believe that we will have any significant issues here in New Zealand.
So with the court case going on in Australia, it could take some time for this to actually work its way through?
I think it will take some time, but we shouldn't be allowing tobacco companies to determine our domestic law. Our interest is not in profit. Our interest is in the health and well-being of our communities. That's what's important to us.
And what's your understanding of the trade implications and being able to get around some of the rules that are within some of the trade agreements?
Well, my understanding is that the arrangements that this government had won't be affected in those trade agreements should the tobacco companies decide to take that as an issue to court.
Crayfar Farm's decision is out just now, so it's been approved. What's your response to that?
Well, we've always been very clear that the Overseas Investment Office has never ever worked closely with iwi or consulted with them on these matters. That's our major concern about this whole issue.
So what was your opinion about this particular request?
Meaning?
Well, you're saying that the office has never worked with you on any of the applications, so what is your opinion on this particular Crayfar one?
Well, obviously they didn't work with iwi on this particular matter either, so we're not surprised that they've come out with agreeing that the farms can be sold. We're not concerned about who the farms are being sold to, and I want to make that clear. What we are concerned about is the lack of consultation that takes place that could have enabled some iwi to decide that they might have wanted to buy those farms.
Well, just back on smoking for a second, or cigarettes. Were you ever a smoker yourself?
I think I would have probably had a couple of tries when I was 16.
What made you try it?
My mother smoked, all of my aunties smoked, probably all of our relatives did. And I guess that because it seemed to be quite a bit of a normal thing within our families, I think I stole a couple of my mother's smokes at one point.
Was the glamour, if I can use that word, of the packaging a factor in you personally wanting to try smoking?
No.
So why do you think then that it will have an impact on other young smokers in that situation that might try it?
Because we know how important it is to the tobacco industry to have their branding out there in the public domain. I know that from conversations that I had with them earlier on, the importance of the branding, and we know that more and more, and particularly today, that branding is quite important to young people. If we think about their clothes and the way they want to look and be, brand is very important to them. So we believe that it is part of the process that we want to undergo, and we want to put some robust policy in place. That's why the consultation process is really important.
But your own experience suggests that there's other stronger factors why young people take up smoking. So what do you do about that?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm only talking to you about my own personal opportunity that I took on a couple of occasions and didn't like it. But the interesting thing is that my husband and I have never smoked during our relationship or since we've been married. All of our children had a go at smoking. We've only got one who's not smoke-free today. And they did it because it seemed like a really normal thing, that all our relatives were engaged in smoking, and so they saw George and I as sort of being a bit different to everybody else. So it is something that all of us need to think about. We've got to take it to our marae venues, we've got to take it everywhere, and I think the exciting thing that I've seen over the years coming from the health sector is that most of our homes are smoke free. It would be a very rare thing to see people smoking on the marae today. So, you know, there has been a huge change, and I believe New Zealand is up for this. I think New Zealand wants a healthy country. We know that we spend huge money, and the latest cancer report should tell us something. The only cancer that continues to be really prevalent today is lung cancer. Now that should be a major message to all people who smoke, and I take into account that it is a very addictive substance.
So do you want to see it banned altogether?
Oh look, in an ideal world, you know, it shouldn't be sold here. It's killing 13 people a day, and we know that many people are having strokes. We know it's all related to cigarette smoking. So of course, you know, when I look at my own family, when I look at all my cousins and my relatives buried over in our cemetery, most of them not reaching 55, of course I feel very strongly about this issue.
How important do you think taking the brand off the packets is going to be to reducing the smoking rate?
I've already answered that question.
Sorry, I was a little bit late.
Well, I think that we all know how important brand is. We're worried about the uptake by young people, and we know how young people are very influenced by branding. We also know how important it is to the tobacco companies.
So it's more about stopping those younger people from getting on the bandwagon rather than helping people on.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on the fact that at a time when so much of the country is going smoke-free, you can still light up a cigarette on Parliament's grounds?
Well, you know, we all have our views about that.
What are yours?
My views are that Parliament should be setting the example. Nobody should be smoking outside the doors or on the grounds of Parliament. If we're being really serious about this issue, we wouldn't have people smoking in these areas. We wouldn't have them smoking in public parks where children are. All of those things will be, and I think in the long term they will be considered.
Can I just ask you about the casino issue and what your thoughts are about this idea of giving up some of the country's gambling laws in order for this to be built with no money from the government going into it?
Oh, we've been very, very clear about that. We're opposed to it.
So will you support legislation that could change the Gambling Act to allow that to go ahead?
No.
Last question, please.